So this is lesson 6 of Flora and Fauna, using heat transfer paper to make representations of your observational drawings and any designs that you're most happy with so far. So I sent you through the post some heat transfer paper. So this is paper that's been coloured with fabric dye. So for the example that I'm going to show you today, I'm going to use a drawing that I made of a blackbird. Okay, so that's the blackbird. Okay, so you can either trace it off, or you can make a template. You can draw it out again and make a template. It kind of depends on how much you've got of the colours, or whether or not you're going to go abstract. So you need to work with what colours you have and work around that. So if I had lots of small pieces, then I might need to break my pattern up into pieces like I have done with this template. Okay, if you've got a bit that's big enough, then you might find that you can draw it straight on the back of the paper. So I'm working just on the outside of my line, and I'm using my fingernail, not that I've got much now, but you just use your fingernail to stop it from ripping too far in. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's a little bit bigger, it doesn't even matter if it's not exactly the same, it's an artistic representation of your work. Okay, so I'm going to put that out like that. You can just pinch with between your finger now and your finger to pull those little pieces off that you might have at the end. Okay, so I now have the main body shape of my bird. I use the end of my pencil to take a tiny bit of glue off like that, and then I'll put it on the back of where I'm going to join my piece. So I'm going to join my leg to this. So this is the part of the bird's leg that comes down where there's still fur, which is why I tore that bit. And then this is the bonier part of the leg that goes on there like that. So I'm going to join my leg into here. Before the glue sets, you could just double check with your drawing and make sure that it's where you want it to be. So there you go, you don't need a lot of glue, you only need it to hold it, okay? So you don't go whacking loads on there, because you're more likely to get it where you don't want it if you put too much on there. So that's my first leg. I've cut these knowing that I was going to join them together, because that was where my line was. I've cut it a little bit bigger so that I've got enough room to put a little bit of glue on there. Alright, so just a little bit of glue on the back of that, where I know that it's not going to come through to the front. I'll turn it over and work out where that needs to go. So lay it down flat, hover it underneath, and it's about there. Okay, so they will set in place like that. Okay, so I'm just using Pritt stick, as I say, just a small bit of that. So for this part here, to work out about where it goes, again, it doesn't have to be exact as long as it looks about right. Again, I gave myself about 5mm there extra, so I can take a bit of glue off of here and I can run it just along the edge there, where it's going to be underneath and not show, about there. Like that. For the beak, work out where it needs to go, perhaps like that, and then you could mark with a pencil that hasn't got glue on it, you could mark whereabouts you're going to be putting your glue. So if I go like that, and when I put it away I can see that I can put glue on this area here. So I'm just going to take a bit of glue again with my Pritt stick, and I'm going to put it on the back. Put that back on the glue stick. Okay. So then pop it underneath where you had it. Okay. The eye, I made the eye a little bit bigger, and I'm going to again glue that underneath. So I'm going to put a little bit of that glue just around the edge. It doesn't have to be all the way round, you just need it in a couple of points just to hold the piece in place. So then put that in place. So now I'm going to cut the highlight out before I stick the pupil in place. Okay, so you can, again, still, I've got this masking tape on it, it's quite handy to just leave it on there to stop it from slipping around so much. So I'm using my knife. If I didn't have my knife, I'd fold it and cut it out. Okay, so I'm just going to use my knife to cut out a highlight out of there, so it can just be like a little slit. Okay, like that. Then still going to use my masking tape and put a little bit of glue on the back of there to hold it in place. And then I'm going to put my eye in place on there. Like that. Okay, so it makes it look like it's got a little bit more life to it now. Just add a little bit more texture to this by ripping it. So in the same way that I created the ripped edge along the side in order to give it more of a furry kind of feathery texture, I'm going to do the same here. Now I'm not going to take it all the way down, I'm just going to do it to the edge of the tail feathers at the end. And I might round off those bits a little bit there by pinching and taking off that harsh point that was on the end there. So you could graduate it, so you could come longer with your first bit. Now you're not all going to be doing birds, so this is obviously just an example, but the same thing would apply to something like if you were doing these petals, for example. I could have torn them individually to get like a less of a harsh edge, or the centerpiece that I put in place with a seed head. I might decide that I want to tear that so that it has a more textured effect, which is something that I'll show you after this. So I might go like that, for example, just to create more of a abstract feathery effect at the end. So lay it down, have a little look at where you've made your tears or where you've added your extra pieces on top. If you've made a rip in here to indicate where the bird is turning its head, okay, so that bit of white ripped edge shouldn't obviously have any dye on it or much dye on it, so it will create a very small line. And I've also ripped slightly into here to indicate that that tail feather is behind the body of the bird and behind this wing. Okay, so I'm just going to try this out now and see what happens. So once you've decided whereabouts you want it on your fabric, you obviously need to have it facing down, or in this one, because I'm going to sandwich it between two pieces of fabric, I'm going to have it facing up, okay, because the colour will come through the back of the paper as well. The print won't be as strong, but it will come through, okay. You will still need your greaseproof paper, even if you are sandwiching it between two pieces of fabric, because the dye will come through and it will go onto the bottom of your iron, which will not make you very popular. So I'm gonna, this is on full heat, so being careful not to put your iron in the same place for too long because it will burn the fabric. You want to try and get an even amount of heat on your design. Okay, so keep looking at where you've gone, move it around. So I'm just going to check the edge of my design. I'm not going to lift the whole thing up, I'm just going to check the edge just to make sure that I've got kind of an even colour. So then once you're happy, you can then take your greaseproof paper off and your design, and you can see what you've got. Okay, so as I said, on the polyester, this is polyester lining, so this has just come out of an old dress. It comes out a lot more vibrant, the colour. So this could be used again, and I could, because obviously some of the colour's been taken away, the next print wouldn't be quite as dark, but I could add some of the torn pieces that I saved from the edges, which haven't been used yet. I could add these into the tips of the feathers and around some other areas as well, and do another print, so some of the areas would come out darker than others. But you can see where I've ripped the edges. It's quite nice, the effect. It has given it more of a feathered effect. Okay, and I like the way that it's mottled as well, some of the colours mottled around here. Okay, so that's an idea that you could do with the fauna if you're going down that route. Okay, thing that I started to show you earlier, to see that the colour that's come out on here, by the way, so make sure you use an old towel like I have, because if you use a new towel or you do it straight onto the ironing board, you're going to get colour onto the ironing board, which can transfer onto other pieces of clothing. So this is what I started to show you earlier with the daisy flower. Okay, so you could, instead of having like the same colour in the centre, you could use an opposite colour. Okay, you could, rather than having a crisp edge to represent the seed head, you could tear around the outside of that. Okay, so you can either make a circle or you can use a template and just tear around the edge of that. Looks better if it's slightly off, more oval anyway, makes it look a little bit more realistic. Okay, just use your thumb to pull it. You can sort of stick it in the centre. So something else you can use as well is you can resist the colour with some dried flour. So this I've already heated with the iron to make it nice and flat. Okay, and the reason I did that is because I want, the flatter it is, the crisper my lines are going to be for my resist. If I try and do a resist of something like a flower head, it's going to be so fat that I'm not going to get any crisp line at all. I'm just going to make a mess probably. So I'm going to put this down as well just to show you the difference, okay, while I'm doing it. So I might do some purple behind that, so I could cut out a section of my purple like this. Okay. Yes, I might want it to be crisp on the edge, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so fern leaves, any woods you can get the ferns, okay, and they're really good for doing resists because you get such beautiful patterns within the leaves. Okay, so now that you're allowed to go for a walk in the woods, you can go and get yourself a fern leaf, unless you've got some growing in the garden. Right, so I'm going to just pop that down there. Doesn't matter where because it's just like a test piece. That one there I'm going to put down this way, like that. Okay, this one, I should really make one for the front of that as well, shouldn't I? So let's just have a look how big it needs to be. Okay, so we'll have this one poking out to the side a bit. I'm going to tear that around my line, slightly larger than my line so that I know that it's definitely going to fit. Doesn't matter if it overlaps, but it'll look a bit rubbish if it's smaller. Okay, chuck that to the side. And now you need your transfer paper again, so I'm going to put that over the top like that. Okay, again, it's best, I'm sitting down at the moment, but it's best to get as much weight on it as you can, because when we did this at school we'd use the heat press, and obviously you've got it sort of sandwiched and pressed down, and it's also a continuous heat all the way over, isn't it? But here we're going to have to move our iron about and try and get it equal. So once you've checked, just to make sure your colours come out enough, you can then take your iron away. You do need to be careful when you check to see whether or not the colours come out, because as soon as you lift it, especially with the smaller pieces, when they're not joined, they'll just move. You see how that's moved? If I put it down again, I might not get a very nice design. It could look good if it's got a pattern and a shadow on it, but sometimes, especially with more delicate colours like this, it sometimes can just make it look like a bit more of a mess, which you don't want. So I'm going to take these off. Put them back like that. Okay. So you've got that as well. Okay, so the reason this has got blue in it here is because I already used this once as a print. So there you go, that was heat transfer printing. So whichever design you were most happy with, I'd like you to have a go at stitching back into it and creating wherever you feel like it needs a bit more detail. So for example, along the edges of these petals, you might do something like backstitch, or you might work on the machine, or you might put in some of the creases within here. Look back at your original drawings. Again, have a go at doing this, but please also work from your drawings as well, because you'll get a lot more marks if you've worked from an original drawing rather than just picking up some leaves from your garden. Okay, do that as well because it's quite good fun, but make sure you do at least one of your design ideas is worked from a drawing that you've made. Okay. Alright, or something you've adapted, a pattern that you've adapted from the designs that you did on the computer or with the tracing paper.